Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. My name is Mpho and I am the host of the Full Quota podcast, along with Tim Delace, who's here with me. We talk all things South African cricket, and it's been an interesting week, but it's been an interesting 1 month. We've had visitors to our shores, the West Indies, and we're going to be continuing our discussions around that. But before we continue, if you'd like to advertise to our podcast, anything, just let us know. Please do send me an email at mpho@1wsr.com. In terms of putting through, I'll give you stats, I'll provide everything else, but it helps to keep us going. And so essentially that's essentially what it is. But for today's show, before we get into everything else, Tim, how are you doing?
Doing good, mate. All excited for the ODIs. It should be interesting. It's another sort of new dawn, if you like, a brand new coach, a brand new set of ideas, some new faces to the squad. So yeah, all good.
Okay. And so what we're discussing today is the ODI series preview. And so we're going to be looking at the squads. We're going to be talking about Buffalo Park. There are 3 ODIs, non-Super League ODIs, and they are going to be played in East London and Buffalo Park. And then on top of that, the final ODI will be played in Potch at Sinmas Park, which is quite interesting because now we're sending a lot of games around the world. The one wicket, I think, is very slow, whereas the other wicket, the Potch one, I think is going to be quite pacey. So it's going to be quite interesting. And we've also got different squad things to go through. But Tim, let's start with expectations. What are you expecting from this ODI series from the Proteas? It's not a Super League one, but what do you want to see? What's the first thing you want to see?
I want to see a different plan. I want to see an approach that is aligned with the way that we're playing our Test cricket at the moment. So if we can take that positive approach that is happening in the Test cricket across to the white ball series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not expecting massive changes, but if that approach can transfer into the ODIs, in theory, that should mean that our batting should be better in their ODIs, particularly in that white ball format when you don't see second and third slips for very long. You know, you see that for the first couple of overs, and then they spread out. So I'm hoping for not so much innovation, but more just a positive approach in the way that we play our cricket. I don't want to see timid play, shall we say. That's particularly where my focus will be on the batting, as it was in the longer format.
Okay. I think for me, I'm similar to you. I'm looking for a little bit of a more positive approach, like we did in the UK against England, not in the UK, against England, and also a little bit more aggressive with regards to the bowling, seeking to take wickets at all times, and not necessarily trying to hold up and end or anything else. So I'm expecting from the new dawn something along those lines. Okay, let's go into the next thing, which would be looking at the Proteas squad, discussing that. There are some changes, and then we're going to talk about where we see holes and what it necessarily looks like, and then we're going to move into what predictions we may have or any news coming out of the presser. So from a squad perspective, this is the squad. You've got Temba Bavuma, you've got Joel Kutsia, Quinton de Kock, Tony Dezorzi, Bjorn Fortuin, Riza Hendricks, Sisanda Magala, Marco Jansen, Heinrich Klaassen, Marco Jansen, Wayne Parnell, Lungin Giti, Ryan Rickleton, Andile Petlugwaya, Tabay Shamsi, Tristan Stout, Lazard Williams, Rassi van der Dissen. The guys highlighted in yellow, Heinrich Klaassen, Aidan Markham, and Dev Miller will only be available for the third ODI in Potch. Obviously, you will be asking where Anrich Nokia is. You'll be asking where Kakiso is, and they are being arrested. Obviously, Wayne Parnell came in because of the injury to Vian Mulder. So did Marco Jansen, being added to the squad this morning. And then on top of that, Tabay Shamsi is now in due to the Achilles injury of Keshav Maharaj. From that point, um, what were your initial thoughts of the squad when it was announced 2 weeks ago, and where do you think South Africa might be good at and where South Africa might struggle, and where are our headaches?
Yeah, I wasn't. There weren't names that you definitely did not think would be here that are here. So there weren't. There wasn't in that context. If Tony was going to play in the longer format, I expected him to play in this one. So when he was selected in the tests, I kind of saw that coming. I thought Ryan would get a chance in this format. I suppose the only one there that would be a little bit of a surprise is Bjorn. Not because he doesn't deserve it, he 100% does deserve it. It's just he hasn't been the flavour of the month in terms of Proteas selection for a good couple of years now. He's played a couple of T20s for the national side, but he just hasn't been the flavour of the month. Maharaj has been the guy that's played all three formats, across the formats the last couple of years. So that's really closed the door on Bjorn. So the fact that as terrible as an injury that is to Maharaj, it's created an opportunity for Bjorn. I'm really glad to see him in there in terms of that that happening. What will be interesting, what is going to be interesting is how somebody like Russie now transfers. Russie is now effectively no longer a Test cricketer, so we know he is king in this format. We know he is king in this format, but it is going to be interesting to see in terms of his progression is whether not having that security, if you like, of always being in the squads, that might affect him. He is getting a little bit older now. Retirement is probably it's not there, but I'm sure it's crossed his mind, even if briefly for a moment or two. So it will be interesting in terms of that. The other thing it'll be very interesting is how they use Shamsi, because Shamsi wasn't in the squad originally. Maharaj was going to play, and he was going to play. He is going to be the three format guy. The fact that he isn't, and the fact that this isn't Shamsi's preferred white ball format. He gets wickets there, absolutely, but it isn't his preferred white ball format. He's a better, in my opinion, T20 bowler, because batsmen have to take the attack to him in that format, whereas at this one they don't have to. They can almost see him off. With Anna and Rabada not available, they can almost see him off and take the charge against the rest of the attack, which isn't weak. It isn't weak. That would be disingenuous, but it is fair to say it is weaker than it would have been if this was, say, a World Cup. This is a slightly weaker bowling unit in terms of that. So it is going to be interesting to see. What also the other thing that did come out of the press conference. We'll get into the press conference later, but essentially the line was a lot of guys are going to get their chance in these three games. So expect many changes. Don't expect a flat 11, and that 11 is going to play throughout. So that's going to be interesting how they go about that in terms of rotation, in terms of where they have the different personnels and who's coming in for who. So lots of things to go into, but that's in my initial thoughts.
So when I look at the squad, I think I look at the bowling and say, obviously, this is what the world would look like without Kagiso and Anwar, right? So it's a massive opportunity for Lungi, also for Gerald to get a run in the ODI setup. The question for me Is it whether Marco Janssen or Wayne Parnell? Who are you going to choose there? Also, the question, obviously, how they're going to use Sisanda and Lazard going forward as a third, especially with what Buffalo Park looks like being a dryish wicket, right? So I have a lot of questions around how to fit the team from 7 down, right? Essentially, so from that all-rounder spot, that number 7 spot, all the way to 11, what that looks like, and based on on the slowness of the pitch, how you're going to do it. The other question, obviously, is to Bray Shamsi. How is he going to come in? Is he just going to be a replacement, and Bjorn's going to be leading? But the other question, then, obviously, is Bjorn obviously is going to play. Do you play 2 spinners? I'd like for the Proteas to play with 2 spinners going to the World Cup, but that's my only question. From a batting perspective, I think obviously your opening pair is sorted. The question is obviously number 3. Does Rassie bat at 3, or does Rassie go down the order in the absence of David Miller and Aiden Markram? You've also got Tony DeZorzi. You also need you also have Reza Hendricks and in the side, and so how do they all fit into this top 6? And if Ryan Rickleton makes it into this top 6, as is, and also does Tristan Stubbs bat at 6 now with David Miller going? So it's kind of like for these first 2 ODIs for me is a world without your stars in terms of David Miller, as well as the crutch that's been Aiden, because Aiden can bowl and bat a bit. So if one of your bowlers goes, you can always throw the ball to Aiden. And then on top of that, what it looks like without Einok and Kagiso. So that's where I'm looking at. From a press conference point of view, Tim, did Temba, obviously they interviewed Temba, did Temba give you any views as to what they're looking to do? Obviously, it's Rob Walters' first ODI series in person. Have they given you any indications or anything to that effect as to what he's expecting and what we should all expect?
Yes. So they talked about the sort of the modern positive approach. They talked about that. They talked about how quickly they were able to turn it around in terms of approach in the test format, and that they're looking to do it similar in the white ball format. So they are not looking to sort of see out the first 10 overs and then build from there. They're actually looking to be positive in those first 10 overs. So that already is a huge change for Mark. Mark was all about conserving wickets and going big at the end. So that's already a change for me. The other thing is, as I alluded to already, he said, we want to check combinations. So the new guys that are coming in are going to play. The new guys are coming in. They're not coming in for the experience. They're going to get a game. That's the way that they're thinking. Providing everybody is fit, that is what is going to happen. So we saw that in the test format. Because these are not ICC points, that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to give everybody a go, so to speak. Try a few combinations, and then you have your 11 for those 2 games against the Netherlands, which are for points. So that makes perfect sense. Just the last thing on the press conference is talked about injuries. So let me get this right. Magala has got a split webbing.
Oh, so he's not going to play.
Yeah. Putler has got back spasm. And Parnell was sick yesterday, but he did practice today. He did practice a full training session. So out of those 3, the only guy that is 100% fit is Parnell. So that when we talk about the 7th spot, that pretty much closes the door on the 7th spot, at least for tomorrow. Yes. I don't think that they didn't say that, but I don't think you can expect Magala or Andile to play tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. That's actually quite interesting that they came in with all these injuries. But obviously we just finished the domestic season, so you're carrying over certain niggles and things. It's just really disappointing that we might not even see Sisanda play in this one. Did they mention anything about preparations for the Netherlands series or anything to that effect?
No, it was all about finding the right combinations in this format. It's a new start. They want to find the right combinations, which is why they're going to try a few things. Give those guys, give the Tristan Stubbs and the Ryan Rickertons of this world a chance. They will be playing at some stage in the series, but they didn't touch on the Netherlands at all. It was all about this series. We live in the here and now.
So let's talk about the conditions, obviously, now. I know in the press they did speak about the conditions. Timber does say it is dry. Did he add anything else to it?
He said it was a bit on the slow side. They've spoken to a lot of the local players and coaches, and they said, expect this pitch to be a bit on the slow side. So it will be interesting what they do with that. Does the slow side tell South Africans that, okay, we've got 2 spinners at the squad, let's play them both? It will be interesting. It will be interesting.
Yeah. So look, I think it would work for me. Well, I'm always 2 spinners anyway. So I think we just need to go into those 11s because my 11 from a bowling perspective has both of them, Tabrez and Bjorn, and then you just rotate the fast bowlers. So now the only question is, if you look at this, what your 11 looks like. So let's go into. Obviously, we know it's so Tim, I'm going to ask you to give me your 11, and then I'll see if mine is slightly different to yours.
Okay. Well, I'm going on those recent announcements of the injuries. So it's going to be De Kock, Bavuma, Reza, Rassie, Rickelton, Stubbs, Janssen, Fortuin, Lazard, Shamsi, and Gidi.
Okay. Lazard, Shamsi, and Gidi.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'd want to see Marco, Gerald, because I'm just looking at your list, trying to make sure that we've met all the transformation situations.
I might not have. Let me see. Let me look.
So okay. Tony DeZorzi has to count. Oh, Riza's here. Riza Temba. You've got Fortuin, Lazard, Shamsi, and Gidi. Okay, that's more. You can actually even take one out. So on my end, I'd be taking out Lazard for Joe Kutsia, because you would need. I would want someone who could bowl that whole 150 pace, as well as having Gidi in there because of his variations into lead the attack. My only other question would be, so Marco Janssen's our 7, does Parnell play or not? And if Parnell's fit to play, I'd play Parnell and play Marco in Poch, right? As to the way the squad was announced in the first place, I thought just because of Parnell's illness, Marco comes in, so Marco's going to be covered. So for me, Wayne Parnell plays in the Janssen spot. The 2 spinners are there. The only other question would be, where does a Tony DeZorzi fit into this 11? Should Tony DeZorzi play? And that was my big question, because obviously you've got Rassie at 4, you've got Reza at 3. Does Tony bat at 5? But you're obviously giving Rex an opportunity. So that was my only question about Tony, because I think I don't be surprised if Tony plays tomorrow. The question is, where's he going to bat?
No, look, I agree. I agree. To me, it was a coin toss. It literally was a coin toss, and I could have gone either way. I could have easily played Tony in this 11. I actually had him at 3. I actually said, you know what, he's batting at 3 tests. In this 11, I'd have no issue with him coming in at 3. You could have him in at 5, and then move everyone up so you can have Rassie at 3, Ricks at 4, Tony at 5. You could do that perfectly. I would have no massive issue with that. I don't think there's a massive issue for me in terms of where he plays. The only thing I want him to do is play his natural game. So even if we're 10-10 for 1 and he's batting at 3, I want him to go out and score runs. I want him to go out there and score a runner ball. That's what I want.
Okay. So I think from my thing, I think going into the series, I look at that batting lineup and it's devoid of the David Miller insurance. You've got the Rusty insurance, but you don't have the over 35 to 50 insurance with David Miller. And this is a massive role for Tristan Stubbs. Tristan has to like step into this role and make it his own. And it's against his T20 role, where his T20 role was just be the master blaster and be the power hitter. This one requires you to kind of build some sort of an innings, but also then become a power hitter because you've got more time. Tristan's had an incredible one-day cup. And I'm happy that he's being rewarded. But obviously at the national level, you want to see that. And to a certain extent, that's where I think the series might be won and lost, not necessarily on the bowling. I think bowling and ODIs is just unless you're having a very, very good day and you bowl everyone up to like 160, the differential is like 30 runs and everything else. And it largely comes down to your batting, how your batting strategy actually applies itself as you go along. And for South Africa to consistently score 300 runs or 300 plus, you're going to need Tristan Stubbs to kind of become that type of a player that allows you to score 100 runs in the final 10 overs. And on top of that, it's a lot of pressure on Ryan Rickleton as well, batting at 5, or whoever bats at 5. If Rusty drops down to 5, because that was my thinking. I was like, do you drop Rusty down to 5 and leave Ryan at 4 just to ease the pressure? Because there's a lot of pressure in that period. And to a certain extent, I think Aiden hasn't even gotten to that point where you're comfortable with him in over 35 to 50. And so to a certain extent, for me, that's been my thing about South Africa is who's going to be our number 5. The guy who's going to back up David Miller in those final 10 overs, because I know my number 7 is not going to do it for me. I can't trust Marco Jansen to do it, but I can trust 6 and 5. And so that's where my thing lies in this thing and in this series, is that I think the series for South Africa will be won and lost on how well we bat at 5 and 6. Doesn't matter what the 1 to 4. You can be 200 for 3 after 32 overs. If you're 200 for 3 after 32 overs, you should be, or 3. You should then be, or 2. You should then be able to get to 400, 380 minimum from that position, and that's reliant on how well your 5 and 6 play, and the ability of you not to lose wickets. And so that's where I'm at right now with this team. Is I'm seeing combinations. I understand that, but we're kind of it's the first inkling into a world without David Miller as to. And I don't understand it because I think David's 32. He's got like 6 more years on the side. He only plays limited overs cricket. He should be fine, for the next 6 years. But if Tristan Stubbs comes in, you can have a 5 and 6 of Miller and Stubbs, which is really good. But you've also got Ryan Rickleton, and he's been rewarded for his form. So that's where I'm at right now with that middle to lower order. Because even Heinrich Claessen's not there. Heinrich Claessen would do the job for us. So it's quite interesting because I'm a little.
For me, it's similar to what Shukri has done. So when they spoke to Shukri, and I apologize for going about the test coach, but it's important. He said they want alignment. They want alignment between the two. They don't want 2 different messages for 2 different formats. They will be differences. They don't want a completely different approach. They want alignment between the 2 of them. They have a similar way of thinking. So, in terms of Shukri has said, for the moment, no night watchman. We move over to the ODI setup. No Klaasen, no Miller, no Markram. It's basically saying to the guys that are there, perform. Yes. I'm giving you a tiny safety net. But I'm not going to give you the full package until you've performed. Once you've performed, then I will give you the full package, the full safety net. So it's putting the guys under pressure. It's now up to them to say, you know what, I can handle the pressure. So it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, particularly with the fact that we don't have it doesn't matter in terms of points. I think that's a huge bonus for us, for where we are in this format. I think it's a huge thing, because we are in a position where we can try different combinations. We can try a couple of different things. We don't have to stick to the same old story. So I think it's a good thing. We could sink in the series, we could, but that wouldn't be the end of the world. We would then go, that didn't work. We would have still learned a lesson that what we did there didn't work. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
Okay.
Depends what result it gets. I still think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Look, yeah, and then let's talk about our opponents a little bit. Obviously, so there's some names that we don't know. Shai Hope is now the captain of the side. Robin Powell's had a great limited overs period in the last 6 months. Is there anybody in this West Indian side that you are particularly worried about? I'll give you one. I want to see Akil Hussain. I think Akil Hussain could be a problem for our batters. He is their left arm spinner. But obviously you've got the Kyle Mayers, the Odin Smiths, the Romario Shepherds who are coming in. A lot of guys we've seen in SA20. Is there one guy you're like, ooh, we need to get this guy out, or we need to see this guy off from a bowling perspective?
For me, it's the Nicholas Pooran. We've seen Odin Smith in glimpses, as you rightly say, at my Cape Town. I'm a big fan of his, but we didn't see enough of him. For me, it's what Nicholas Pooran and Kyle Mayers do. If those guys come off, then it could be a competitive series. I actually don't think it will at the moment. I think there's a lot of issues going on at the moment with this cricket. I think they're quite shocked at how, not the fact that they lost the Test series, but in the manner of the loss.
Yes, yeah.
I think that is still being mulled over. There's still a debrief to be had over that. But those two, for me, Kyle Mayers and Nicholas Pooran. Nicholas Pooran is one of the most talented cricketers in the world. But he doesn't produce it enough for me. But he has everything. He has everything to do well in this format. He has everything.
And he was their former captain as well. So he let go of the captaincy, and now you've got all of that. Rovman Powell's an interesting one for me from an all-round perspective. I think he's a really long hitter. The question for me with the West Indies is, can you give me an innings over 50 overs that can be competitive enough against the South African bowling attack? And obviously they need Shai Hope, they need Pooran to come through, and then obviously you're going to need the Shamar Brookses to kind of bring it all together. Roston Chase is still there. But from a bowling perspective, I think that's where they can actually win it for them. Obviously, we've seen Odin Smith, we've seen Romario Shepherd, and they're not bad. You've also got Jason Holder, who's really good, as well as Shannon Gabriel. To me, it's the spin. How South Africa handle the spin, especially with this newish middle order. It's going to be quite interesting to see how it goes. And what's your prediction before we wrap it up? Well, as we wrap it up.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a 3-0. I really do. I think it's going to be a 3-0. We're going to coast it relatively easily. I really do. I really do. The only way that I could see that not happening is if we come a cropper against their spin. And I mean really a cropper. I mean like Akil gets something like 5 for 20. Which is not impossible. Because I do like him a lot, and we do have a problem against spin. And our best players of spin are not here outside of Chakok. I think that could be an issue. But I just think we've got too much firepower. I think there's a feel-good factor here. The feel-good factor that gives us 10%. It's a feel-good factor. Yeah. And I know social media can lie about these sorts of things. But if you just go to the social media and you look at the players and their pictures, the videos that they're uploading, at the camp that they're having, they just look happy. They just look happy. They don't look hassled, stressed. They look like a happy bunch. They look as if they're enjoying each other's company. Look, we've been there before. playing with full of confidence, and we come up cropper. We've been there before. But I'd be very surprised if we didn't win the series. I would be very, very surprised. For the reasons that I pointed out. But we'll see. We will see.
Look, I'm saying it's a World Cup year, so the Proteas are going to do well. It's not going to be a 3-0, but I do think that West Indies has a win in them. So 2-1 for me. It is a World Cup year. So all these feel-good vibes I've seen before. We need to get ourselves to the World Cup. So we need to find an 11 and a 15 that gets us to the World Cup. This is the start under Rob Walter, so I wish him all the best. But I'm not going to get excited. I think we could dominate them, and the way we dominate them is up front. If Timber and Quinny and Rassie can dominate them, similar to how our top four dominated West Indies in the Test series, then it should be a really good, a really decent series one. So I'm excited, especially on the slow tracks. It'll be interesting to see how Timber manages the bowlers and what the strategy around slow wickets are as we prepare to play a World Cup in India. So well done to whoever did the whole planning to send us to a place where the tracks will be slightly slower. Poch is going to be very quick. It always is. We're on the high fault, right? And then so you're going to see that, and you might even get one spinner. But for me, 2-1, I think we win the one in Poch. We win the first one. We lose the second one. Just because, these things happen. You might find yourself with a batting collapse from like 150 for 2. You'd be like 250 for 7. And then it's all she wrote. But excited to see Bjorn. I think Bjorn's going to be an outstanding player in the series. Is there any other player that you're looking to see, Tim, that you think might be the one or outstanding?
I think that as you have already alluded to, this is the time for Tristan. This is the time for Tristan to go. I'm not just a T20 player. I'm not just a one in every 6 kind of guy. I am going to be consistent, and I can play both formats. So, and I'm talking with the bat here. I don't really want to see him bowl. If we see him bowl, we're in trouble.
We're in trouble. But, yeah. Okay, Tim. That's our series preview. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the ODI series. It starts tomorrow in Buffalo Park, then the second one over the weekend in Buffalo Park, and we close out in Poch the following week. And then we've got the T20s, and then we're going to talk about the T20s, and then we're going to talk about the Netherlands series. So lots of cricket happening in this month up until the 2nd of April. So we're going to be in and out as quickly as possible. Outside of that, have a great time. Enjoy the cricket. Goodbye, and le sale, cacafiso.